Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Kai Burwal. I hope you hear me already, it looks like it. And today we're going to have a look at 3D assets with Revit, importing custom assets and managing and working with our default assets that Enscape provides. Just a little bit of housekeeping here. I'm just going to wait a couple seconds, maybe a couple minutes, so everyone has time to join in. Let's see. There we go. Answering with me or taking care of the questions during the presentation today with me is Norbert Grazer, our team lead of application engineering here at Enscape, and I'm going to hold the presentation. We are aiming for something like 40-45 minutes of presentation in general. Once again, we're going to cover, well, managing Enscape assets with Revit, what's good to know, and importing and managing custom-made assets from Fbx, OBJ, and GLTF files. And we're going to cover that in about 40-45 minutes. And then we'll have a Q&A. So if you have any questions regarding Enscape assets, custom or original ones, feel free to type them in the questions field, which you should see. One second, which you should see here. Yep, and yeah, the project we are going to tackle the topic in today. This one here might be familiar. This is our default sample project for Revit, which you can access through our website. Let me open it. That's enscape3d.com. And if you go to the very bottom, there we are. You can go to free sample projects down here and download the project, the very same project we're having a look at today from here if you want to. But of course, the topic we're covering is very irrelevant of what topic or what project you're currently working with. This webinar is being recorded, so you will receive an email roughly 1 hour after the webinar is finished with the recording or with a link to the recording of this webinar, so you can rewatch it, you can share it with others if you'd like. And yeah, other than that, let's get started and have a look into it. Let's first align Revit here on the left half of the screen and Enscape on the right half, and bring back up my presentation so I know what to talk about. Yeah, so Enscape assets, good to know. First of all, the assets that we provide, the Enscape asset library, which of course you can access using this button in the Enscape interface. That has stayed the same in Enscape 3.0, by the way. So this button did not change and the interface itself didn't either. If you have been working with Enscape assets before and you're wondering right now, why did it load so fast for Kai here? I hope you are aware of the offline Enscape assets. Wait a second, where's my drawing tool? There it is. Of the offline Enscape assets checkbox down here, which if you haven't checked it yet, you can check it and Enscape will download all of our 2,467 assets at once on your hard drive. You can select a folder where to save them, and that way you can access them much quicker and don't have to wait for them to load every single time. So that's of course really important. If you haven't worked with Enscape assets before, let's have a short general overview. Enscape 3D assets are 3D models that you can place in your scene, in your Revit project by simply clicking on it to select one. Let's go with Amy. One click and I can place the model somewhere around here, wherever I want in my Revit file. Of course, as always, it will take this level that we can select up here in Revit as a level to place it on. So let's go with living room level, for example, and place the woman right there. And we see it will pop up in Enscape right away. Where's my mouse? There it is. So or won't. No, there she is. So yeah, the model will pop up right away and will be displayed as you see it here as a high quality, real-time optimized model. So this is not just a high quality model, but in order to maintain performance in Enscape and enable you to move fluently through your visualization, those models are really improved or are as optimized as possible to give you great details, but also work on every hardware that Enscape supports, and also allow you to place many of these models at once. So that's one great aspect about these models. Also, if you choose one 3D asset from the vegetation or from the vegetation a group of models here, especially a tree model, those will also move in the wind in Enscape, as you see here. So yeah, great way to fill your scene with life and movement and interesting things to look at. In general, that is one thing that I think is really, really important about the Enscape assets. It's just a really quick way to fill your scene with detail, make it believable, and yeah, make it for viewers to feel like drawn into the scene, or make it better understandable for the viewer. So yeah, use assets to fill your scene with life. Really useful. I'll actually skip a couple of points for now because I want to tackle one point right away. What if you say, however, I don't want to fill my scene with all of these placeholders here, for example? There's multiple ways. Of course, you could just hide the Enscape models. One common thing about them is they're all from type planting family. We'll cover that later on, but that is mainly to be able, so you are able to change the scale if you want to, which is of course useful for trees, plants, etc. But you can also, and that is something that is exclusive for Revit at this point, you can also take your Enscape asset, any asset you want, and relink it with a family of your choice in your scene. So let's say I want to place maybe let's see, I want to place a component and then replace it. So let's say we are going, I think I have mostly Enscape assets in the scene. So let's go with this one here, for example. This little, what is it, a table? Oh yeah, I've placed it, of course, in the wrong level. So let's go with this. And I have this little table now here called family 1, if I saw it correctly. No, family 5, if I saw it correctly. So that's great. This means to be just an example for any family that you want to choose. So you can define your own placeholders for Enscape assets, your own sort of anchors that link this high quality model that we have, as mentioned here, to any object in your Revit scene. So I really just picked this table here by randomly, just to have something to place. And I can exchange it on the Enscape side with something much, much more complex. Well, actually, or with something more simple, because the family on the Revit side can also be much more complex than the actual 3D asset, because you can also use it to hold BIM information, etc. So that's really useful. Let's have a look at it first. So I've just placed a little table. So I want to get close to that somehow. Let's go with maybe this one here, although they're not really resembling each other. And I'm going to click these 3 dots at the bottom, and this will allow me to place the asset on an active work plane if I want to, place the asset on a surface if I want to, or link a Revit family to the asset. And once again, this is just an example as a little table. I can choose any family I want. In this case, we're going to go with family 5, and nothing really changes on the Enscape side. There is a custom parameter added to the family that I just chose. But as you see, the one that I've placed before, which is hidden in the ground, and this table that I've placed now is being replaced on the Enscape side with a 3D asset of my choice. So once again, as we like to keep it with Enscape, it is a really simple functionality that can be used for many things. So you can have the functionality on the Revit side, really just a simplified drawing if you want to, like a circle holding the bin information to a table, to a light, something like that. But you can really keep it simple on the Revit side if you want to, and let it be replaced with an Enscape 3D asset inside of Enscape, just like that, by clicking those three dots we mentioned before and choosing a Revit family to replace it with. So saying that you don't want this additional geometry, you can say that, but you can really decide for yourself how complex or how simple or how your Enscape assets should be displayed on the Revit side. I hope that was useful. Let's have a look into the questions, if there's been most of them answered already. Just put up those. Okay, let's see. Can Enscape assets be placed in Revit links and still be viewed in Enscape from a container Revit file? That is probably not possible. So you should keep your Enscape assets ideally in the main file. However, I'd have to check that probably. I haven't tried that for a while. So yeah, let's cover the questions rather towards the end. Have a look at the time. Okay, we're good in time. So let's see. Yeah, planting families. All the Enscape assets are being saved by default. So we've just covered, of course, how to link an Enscape asset to any Revit family. If you just choose one of the basic Enscape assets and the asset replacement, let's go with this one again. All of these asset replacements are being placed as planting families. Why? I've mentioned that before, because we wanted to enable you to change the scale of all these assets, and the planting family in Revit is the one that is being used, or that has this parameter by default. That is really useful also because that way you can hide all the assets at once if you choose to do so, by hide in view, hide the entire category, and all of the assets can be hidden at once. So you see all of our trees, all of our furniture, etc. Every Enscape asset is gone for now until we Control Z them back. So that is really useful. Of course, you can also use this factor of them being planting families for other benefits. However, there is one apparent first downside, namely if you have a steep angle, if you have a hillside, a street that goes downhill, something like that, and you want to place a car on it, for example, it's often hard to, or on first glance, it might be hard to place a car, for example, on a steep street. Yeah, vehicles. Because planting families, like we have them right now in Enscape or in Revit, sorry, they are upright by default. So let me just place this car on the lawn. I hope no one objects. Just want to highlight something here. If you want to change that, you can of course go into the family and change our parameters here, and you can even leave it. You can even leave it as a planting family. You just need to uncheck always vertical, and let's see, work plane based. And by doing that, we can now, well, actually I don't have a steep angle here right now to show it. I could model one right now, but just so you know, if you ever want to place an asset on a steep street, something like that, just uncheck these two things. Wait a second. Don't want to change them. Don't want to save them. And that way you can place it on any kind of surface, even if it has an angle. I think, do we have one here on our grass? Let's try that. Yeah, so let's try that another time. So apart from that, yeah, that is, or that mostly covers, from my opinion, what there is, or what is useful to know about Enscape and our Enscape assets. Of course, you can also sort your assets, or you can highlight assets that you like, especially with this little star icon, and find them that way in your asset favorites. One quick way to do that. Apart from that, as you see, really simple, really easy to use. I highly recommend to enable this checkbox down here to be able to use offline Enscape assets anytime, and don't have to wait for them to load every single time. Of course, uncheck once in a while to check for new assets, because our 3D artists are always busy creating new 3D assets for you. So if ever you are looking for a or if you have an asset request which you think could be really useful, not just for you, but maybe for all of the Enscape users, we're always happy if you share Enscape asset requests with us, which you can do by either clicking on the feedback button up here, for example, writing us a message, or you can also go to our forums through our website, enscape3d.com, and clicking the forum button up here, and feel free to share your opinion, your feedback, and your ideas for further development. Okay, so that's the Enscape 3D assets. Let's have a look at the custom asset workflow, because I just mentioned you can, of course, write us asset requests, which you would like to see in the official Enscape asset library. However, you can also load in your own custom assets, as you see here. So we have a couple examples here. We're going to go through the process of importing them into the asset library. First of all, what is the custom asset editor? This allows you to load in assets in of any kind in the formats Fbx, OBJ, and GLTF. These, if that sounds unfamiliar, these are the most common formats in the CGI industry. So there are great websites where you can get 3D models from, sometimes free, sometimes paid for. Let's go for turbosquid.com, which is a common industry website where there is thousands and thousands of 3D models, assets for you that you can download, that you can purchase, that you can mostly use in Enscape. Because even if we go, let's test ourselves and let's go with some $1,000 stadium here. I bet it will be available in the, in this case, just the 3ds Max format. So yeah, I wouldn't go for that. If anybody doesn't know where I've just looked at, that's right here. So we're searching for something there that shows OBJ and FBX. Let's see, one more try with such a huge model. And here we go, OBJ, FBX, no GLTF this time, but those are the models, the model types that you can use with Enscape. OBJ, FBX, or GLTF. However, those are not the only attributes that you should go by when picking the models you want to use in your scene, because Enscape, of course, is a real-time rendering software and a real-time visualizer. And due to that nature, there is a limit to the detail we can show at once. So in this case, you see we have roughly about 1 million polygons for this model. So it's not really optimized for real time. So it's great to keep that in mind, because you could probably load this once in Enscape, but if you try to place it like a second or a third time, your graphics card would probably already get a little weak. So it's great to look for something. It always depends, of course. Will your 3D model be visible up close, or will it be just far in the distance at some point? Is it a simple shape? Like, for example, a tree can be really simple, or does it have to be intricate or something like that? Enscape will show a warning message when the model that you bring into the custom asset system is larger than 20,000 polygons. That doesn't mean really anything. You can still load in models that are larger or more complex than that, but Enscape will start bringing up a warning message when that is the case, mostly because we assume whenever you bring in a custom 3D model that you want to place it multiple times in the scene. And because of that, that is where we draw the line and bring a warning, because you, of course, want to make sure your scene is running smoothly. Okay, so that's that. Exactly, where to get models. As mentioned, you can get models from a 3D website, like what I've just shown you, or you can ask a 3D artist. You can also do them yourself. In this case, I have prepared a small little sample project or sample model with a free 3D modeling application called Blender. This is the little test scene that I've created up front with 3 cubes with separate materials. One time we have something plasticky material, one time a metallic material, one time a brick material, and I've exported this as an Fbx file. You can also go with GLTF, as mentioned before, or with OBJ. So all of that is perfectly possible. I've saved that already, and I'm going to load this into our custom asset library. So I'm going to open the asset library again, and here's our custom assets menu or ribbon. Now, when you open this for the first time, it will ask you for 2 folders. It will literally ask you for the let's call it the Enscape work in progress assets and for the finished assets. I can't show you that anymore because it just asks the first time, but you can still change those folders later on by clicking on this little icon here, the source path, and choosing a different folder. In this case, you see I have my data D Enscape custom asset folder right here and my 3 models in here. This is also a really useful tip if you're creating your own library of 3D models and you want to share it with anybody else, with your company, for example. You can simply share the folder that you have selected down here, this one. That's where your custom assets are in. Once you have a little library, a little collection of 3D assets, you can just share this entire folder with any other Enscape user, and they can throw it into the same path they have set up on their computer, and they will see their own, or no, sorry, your custom assets that you just shared with them in the same quality and can use them in Enscape just as well right away. So that's a great tip to remember. You can just share the entire content of your Enscape custom asset library with one go. Okay, but yeah, let's skip all that and actually import a custom asset. We can either batch import a large number of assets. I like to stay with the single import here because I personally like to rework the materials afterwards, because of course we are importing material information from Fbx and GLTF and what they're supporting. It always depends, of course, on your use case and the kind of models that you are importing. There's a multitude of different models out there, but I like to rework the materials. Importing the materials from a different design application and then reworking them in this interface, and we're going to have a look at how to make them look as great as possible inside of Enscape. Okay, to do that, first thing we need to do is add a title. So in this case, I'll call it 3 cubes, so I can distinguish it from my spheres that I have in my custom asset library otherwise. We don't need a description, but I'll just add one anyways. And that's good. Now we could start a new project, open a project. We can just import geometry. And as mentioned before, you see here we have the GLTF, OBJ, and Fbx selection to choose from. I'll go to my desktop where I save my cubes, Fbx. And oh, I see, I've also exported my floor. I actually didn't want to do that. We could go through it and see how to prevent that from happening. And for whatever reason, it seems my scaling was taken probably times 100 or something like that. So right now we have a 2.5 kilometers large scene, it appears, or it looks like. So this might be the first thing that you want to look into as soon as importing a 3D asset, because oftentimes that will be wrong. And the first thing you notice that is when you try to move in the Enscape window here on the right side, and you're not really moving very fast. That means the scene is actually just really, really large compared to your camera speed. So instead, let's go with 2.5 meters. And now you see it is totally gone from existence, so to say. and I have no idea how to get back to my model. Well, what I can do is just hit the 462 key on my numpad on my keyboard down here, and that will move me directly to any geometry in my scene and focus on that geometry. And now you see the scaling is much better and we can actually move around. So as mentioned, first thing you probably want to have a look at when importing a 3D asset is this scaling factor up here. Also, sometimes your models will not show upwards, but maybe like show to the front or something. In that case, there was a different up axis selected in the application that that model was created in. And you can choose it by choosing a different up axis somewhere here. In my case, Y was the correct one. So I'm going to stick with that, but that way you can easily orient it and you don't have to rotate it or anything like that. Okay, the placeholder geometry attribute is probably something we're going to have a look at later on. I can, however, also just summarize it. This placeholder geometry that you can choose here, you can load a separate second model that can be even simpler than your Enscape asset. And that is the geometry that will then actually show up in Revit. So very comparable to what we've tackled earlier, where you could connect your Enscape asset to any family of your choice. This way you can choose any model of your choice to represent Enscape as a family, or the Enscape, your custom asset, as a family in Revit. So that's also really, really useful. You can decide for yourself what it's supposed to look like. Okay, and on the left side, the thing that is left off is our material editor. You see, we have 4 materials that came in with our scene. So this is really important. You see, our materials are already applied and assigned, and our texturing information is correct already. So all of that is being done in the design application that you create your models in, the 3D CGI application, or is being done by the 3D artist who is creating the model. During the creation of these models, it's much, much easier to apply the materials the way they are supposed to. So that's no job for Revit or for Enscape. But as you see, Enscape is reading the application of those materials perfectly correctly immediately. And then we can just continue working with those materials as well we are used to if we know this material editor from other design softwares. If you've only been using Enscape with Revit so far, this material editor might be fairly new to you at this point. However, it's good to have a look at it. Oh, actually, I noticed that I'm in the way, so let's move it to the side here. And it's actually good to have a look at this one because starting from Enscape 3.1, Enscape will also provide a material editor for Revit, an own additional material editor. So it's good to have a look at this, and it's very practical because it's faster and easier to use than the Revit material editor, in my opinion. So yeah, let's start with this green material. First of all, let's have a look at this material type up here. Here you can select, for example, the grass type, which you might know if you add the grass keyword to a material name in Revit. It will be displayed as grass or water or whatever. You can choose that in this material editor right away directly by simply changing the type up here. Then we also set up something in my CGI application. I made this to be metallic. As you see through this Fbx standard, the metallic factor, the metallic attribute of my material was not synchronized, was not communicated to Enscape. So that's why it's really useful to go through and exchange the materials a little bit or rework them. Also, it's looking kind of rough. I might want to have it a little bit more reflective. So I'm dialing down the roughness here. The roughness is the opposite of Revit's glossiness, by the way. So same thing, just the opposite description. And now we have a metallic cube again. In Revit, you have this metallic factor in your appearance tab in the materials. It's just on or off. metallic or non-metallic reflections. With Enscape, you have this slider that you can control this in more detail. And that would be it for this material actually already. Let's have a look at the blue one. I think that is fine by default. Oh, it was this one. So yeah, oh, it's perfectly rough as well. I wanted this to be like a shiny plastic. So let's dial down the roughness here a bit. And for my brick wall material here, let's see, we have the texture applied correctly. The bump mapping information was not transferred correctly through the Fbx. So I'm going to relink this, add a height texture, which is your bump map or your displacement map, change the scale, make it look like we want to, maybe even switch this to displacement map. Let's see what that looks like. Actually, I'm going to leave it like that. And yeah, that now I'm finished with my 3D asset that I wanted to import. I could load a placeholder geometry as mentioned before. I could use the same cubes or the same model again. If I don't use any placeholder geometry, Enscape will generate a bounding box cube that spans your scene. So in my case, it's probably going to get really big because I've exported this plane as well, which I didn't want to. It doesn't matter. Or you can choose any kind of model to act as placeholder for your 3D asset. Okay, last thing that we need to do is create a thumbnail down here. That's this one. So we have something to represent our asset in our custom asset library. And yeah, save project. We need to do that as well. Hit save and generate the asset. And by doing that, it is now actually available in my custom asset library here, even with a new tag down here. And I can click it, place it somewhere in the scene. And as mentioned before, we'll probably have a huge bounding box. Not as huge. Let's actually place it here. Yeah, it's actually just 2.5 meters, right? Because that's what I've entered. So let's see. Where did we place it? Did we choose the wrong height again? Let's see. No, should be there. There it is. Yeah, we chose the wrong platform. So let me go. Let's actually place it somewhere in the air or so. Or of course, we could just say place asset on surface. There we go. There it is. Currently flickering a bit. By the way, that happens when one surface overlaps with another surface in any kind of application right now, because our floor or both our floors are on 0. In those cases, it's really helpful if we just offset it by at least 1 inch or 1 centimeter or something like that. Let's see, 8. No. Oh no, I've deleted it. There we are. And the flickering stops. And here's our cubes, just like that. So yeah, let's see if there's anything else I wanted to cover. I think that is most of it that, yeah, that is useful to know about Enscape custom assets and Enscape assets in general. I'm thrilled to have a look at the questions and see what you have in terms of questions. And let's see. And of course, as mentioned, really useful to keep in mind this workflow where you can just share your entire custom asset library just as a folder with anybody immediately. So I'll just start at the top with any questions that haven't been answered so far. If the checkbox is checked for offline assets, will they update as new assets are added to the library? No, that's not the case. So you should definitely uncheck and recheck that box once in a while, because if there's no connection to our asset servers, there's no way for Enscape to know that there is new assets available. Can Enscape assets be placed in Revit links? Oh, we had that before, Adam. Mark, is this the same process for applying Enscape assets to Revit materials? Mark, if you could repeat that, is this the same process for applying Enscape assets to Revit materials? Do you mean applying Revit materials to Enscape assets? Anyways, it would be great if you could rephrase that question, or of course get in touch. One thing that I haven't mentioned so far, by the way, no, sorry, that's currently not available, but it doesn't matter. You can of course just send us an email to either support@enscape3d.com, or you can hit the feedback button if anything that you want to discuss is not being addressed today, or if yeah, you should maybe reach out one more time or rephrase any question. Okay, can an Enscape asset replace a Revit family in a Revit link? No, because the Enscape asset only, well, no, that's actually the same question as before. I'm pretty sure that Enscape assets, when placed in a Revit linked file, won't show up correctly in Enscape, but I'd have to check. I'll get back to you, Adam, on that. Can you revert it back to the Revit family? That's an interesting question. So you would like to rather see the Enscape replace? Oh no, sorry. You want to revert it once you've connected it to a Revit family. You want to unlink it again, if I get you correctly. So in that case, it would be the file that we've used before. Let's actually try it with this armchair. Just a second there. While it's loading, let's have a look at further questions. So connecting this chair here, link Revit family to asset. Let's go with wall, for example. Yeah, I thought so. We can replace it with a wall. I get that. Let's go with the carpet then. Just checking here. And let's click on these three dots again, link Revit family to asset. Well, I mean, you could go into the family we've just taken, the carpet family, and remove the custom parameter that has been added, but there is no functionality at this point. No, that's carpet dark. But there's no functionality built into right now to disconnect it again. So let's see if we open this family. I haven't looked it up in a while where this custom parameter is. Should be here then. Enscape asset ID. So if you want to unlink a Revit family from a linked asset, yes, just delete these custom parameters here, all of them.
Or just empty one.
And by that, it's just an ordinary everyday Revit family again. Okay. Oh, that's been answered. Can you have Enscape people render white whilst the rest of the model is still renders properly? Yeah. There are options for that. We're currently working on sharing a knowledge base article or something like that on it. Essentially, if you cut off the access to the textures of those assets, that is possible. My colleague Norbert currently working on a presentation on that. There is no preset setting to just render all of your assets white or something, but we're also going to add or to provide new simplified assets with Enscape 3.1, so you can look forward to that. Will this asset link be for all areas or views where the family is placed? Yes, correct. Simon, if you link Enscape assets with the family, is there a way to remove it? Yes, we've had a look at that. Will Enscape support Blender format in the future? You can export Blender as OBJ, Fbx, and GLTF. So I would be interested in why you would need support for Blender format distinctively. If so, feel free to share your opinion with us, but since you can just export it like that. How do you get rid of some light spots when you do nighttime renders? Thank you, Vasco. If you have nighttime renders and you see light spots, blotches, noise, that is probably because you have some object with a Revit material in your scene where self-illumination is enabled, and that is really small and really bright. So you have your appearance library. This is where Enscape draws all its material information from. And if you see those light blotches, light noise, you have a material somewhere in your scene where self-illumination is enabled, and that's probably pretty bright or something like that, and pretty small. That is where these things come from. So yeah, look out for that. If you can find a solution, get in contact with us, and we'd be happy to help you. Exactly. Does the content of that? Oh wait, it has been answered as well. Picture overlay, exactly. OBS, open broadcasting software. Can you rename the materials in this window? No, you can't. You have to rename them in, well, actually in that case, in the design application they came from, or in Revit they won't show up. That could be a feature request if you can tell us why you would need to rename the materials in there. Why are you getting black shadows reflections on the green metallic material? I think that was, I'm not sure. Do you mean here? I think that was still in the interface where we set this object up, and it could be either the blue cube or maybe the sky, or it was during night. I'm not sure anymore. Maybe we'll see it in the recording. Can Imperial measurement be used rather than metric for scaling for Revit? I think that will change depending on your Revit settings. So I have set millimeters by default. I think if you have your system set to feet and inches, it will probably show up that way itself. If not, that would be a feature request. In that case, please feel free to get in touch with us. But I think it will change with your Revit settings. How to hide the floor now? You promised, Zarina. Did I promise that? In that case, well, I would just need to export it properly. So I would open up Blender, like mentioned before, open my file here, and in this case, I only select these cubes, export once again as Fbx, and the thing that I want to make sure to check here is limit to selected objects. And now the floor would be excluded, and I can import it as well. Actually, I can import it as the same custom asset. Oh no, I misclicked. There we are. Let's see, can we edit it? Let's check further questions. Any recommended asset libraries online? Can custom assets be shared across a LAN so multiple designers in the studio can access them? Yeah, you can just share the folder I showed earlier. Where's my custom asset editor? Somewhere out of screen, it seems. Oh yeah, probably behind. No, sorry. In that case, wrong one. I'll just leave it open for now and see what happens. Let's see what questions we have. Continuing on. Can you edit the materials of existing Enscape assets? Unfortunately, not at this point. That is an ongoing feature request, so feel free to share your opinion in our forums or by hitting the feedback button in your Enscape interface. You were showing how to apply assets to Revit families. I was wondering if the process was the same when applying Enscape material assets to Revit materials. Well, Enscape material assets is something that hasn't been released, at least not officially yet. So I can tell much about that at this point, but yes, with Enscape 3.1, we are planning to to bring in our own Enscape materials that you can then use in Revit as well. So whether you'll be able to apply those to, or how you'll be able to apply those to Revit families, you will have to check out our preview releases that you can download from our website. What are some programs you'd suggest for making custom assets to bring into Enscape? Blender is pretty good. That's like the go-to program. It's free, so have a look at that. Is there a trick to having grass carpet be on a vertical surface or bottom surface, or does it only generate upward? It only generates upwards with leaves growing up, yeah, straight up. That is also a feature request, and feel free to reach out to us so we can forward it to our developers. I have an asset request for a southern live oak tree. I'm sorry, I won't file Enscape asset requests right now during webinar. So please write us an email or reach out via the forums. Any chance that assets would ever recognize site as a surface so that we could place on surface? Site is a total pain in the head, everyone know, but still. Norbert just wrote yes with a trick. I would say it's a Revit question. So if you can place something on a surface, that would be great, or that you can use that. You can of course then just link an Enscape asset to that. Maybe Norbert will share his knowledge with you afterwards. Trees are a pain. Any tips on how you content artists create their beautiful tree models? I can assure you trees are a pain for content art or for 3D artists as well. So it's not easy to explain in a short go, but yeah, just stick with our beautiful trees, and they even move in the wind. So I'm not sure what's bad about them. While still keeping the poly count low. Okay, that was the addition to the tree models. Yeah, that's true. It's a masterpiece. I received many Blender files and don't have Blender installed due to IT restriction. This is why I asked if it is possible to support it. Well, in that case, you should ask the people to not send you Blender files, but export directly to Fbx or OBJ or GLTF, and you won't have to install Blender. Can you export a model from Enscape into OBJ or Fbx instead of exe? No, you can't. If you want to write us a message about that, feel free to do so. I think I understand the workflow behind that, but since Enscape is not really adding something to your scene, except for, of course, high quality 3D models, since Enscape is not really adding to your scene, but rather just displaying it, we don't see the value in exporting as an FBX or OBJ file. Of course, from Revit, it could be interesting, but you would still probably have to clean up the mesh for other use cases. So it's a difficult topic. Feel free to reach out and we can discuss. Okay, replied by Norbert. Can you render a decal on a transparent surface? If not, when will this feature be available? No, that is an ongoing bug. I'll talk to the developers about that, or file it as a feature request. And but yeah, it has these transparency issues if you see the sky behind the glass surface. If you see geometry behind the glass, it's good, but if you see the sky through this decal, it's acting transparent. Let's see. Will Enscape support weather effect like fall, spring, summer, and winter? That is an ongoing feature request. Feel free to share or to share your opinion in our forums. How do you make sure your custom texture don't crash Enscape? So just make sure you have a reasonable resolution. Let me show you something. Textures, just stick with a 2K texture or a 4K texture and you're good to go. But if you look at the raw numbers, your graphics card had somewhat like 4, 8, maybe 12 gigabytes of RAM available. One texture that I can download in 2K, JPEG, is like 17 megabytes. In 4K JPEG, it's already 66 megabytes. If we switch to PNG, it's already 258 megabytes in 4K. In 8K, there is 944 megabytes. And we've seen folks that would insist on using 16K textures or stuff like that. And those can then easily reach 2 gigabytes at once. So you have room for like four textures on your graphics card. So it's a principle that can very easily stress your graphics card if you go with very large textures. Usually 2K resolution is perfectly fine with Enscape, JPEG as well, and that way your custom textures won't crash Enscape. Also make sure you're not running any hardware, expensive software on the side. Palo Verde and Mesquite to name. Okay, sorry, Shirley, you have beautiful trees in Arizona. That is great. Melina, did I miss the little trick to tilt the assets? I didn't actually show it because I didn't have a surface, an angled surface to use them or to display that on. To make a asset tiltable, double click it, open the category and parameters, uncheck always vertical and check work plane based. And with that, you can place it on a surface and it will actually tilt. Learned that myself just recently, so I was really glad to see that. And it works. I've seen it. So uncheck the, what was it called? Always vertical and enable work plane based, and then you can move it on a steep angle and it will actually rotate alongside. Great. And I think that's all the questions so far. In that case, thank you very much, everybody. Oh, did I just close Revit? I think so. So yeah, thank you, everyone. And as mentioned, the webinar has been recorded, so you can review it afterwards. And if there's anything that hasn't been covered today, feel free to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to assist you any way possible. Thank you very much. Have a good time. Stay safe, and see you in the next webinar. Goodbye.